Hey gang, okay, this video today we're going to talk to you about requirements. Specifically, we're going to talk about functional and environmental requirements. We've already discussed project requirements and science requirements. We discussed project requirements. Those were in the video called the RFP video, the request for payload. We talked about lots of project requirements. The science requirements came from the science videos. When you guys chose your science objective, you did your science traceability matrix, and you also did the instrument requirements matrix. The instrument requirements matrix and the supporting, and also the support equipment table, those give you your science requirements, because you have a thermocouple or a pressure transducer or a mass spectrometer, and they require so much mass, or they require so much power, they create so much data. Those are your science requirements that you get directly from your science objectives. Those are science requirements. Project requirements come from Inspires. The project requirements are the parent. There's 4 basic types: project, science, functional, and environmental. But project is the parent requirement that kind of feeds everybody else. So the project defined that we would have science at Europa or Jupiter. So that's why the project kind of defined the science. But then you define your science even more precisely with your science objective and then your instruments, and then those instrument requirements, okay? That's how you kind of take that further. The project said that there's certain things that your payload must do. You have to be autonomous, for example. That came from the project. That impacts your functional requirements, okay? We'll talk about functional requirements in a bit. And then and the project also said that we're going to be at Jupiter and Europa. So that's going to impact your environmental requirements too, and we'll talk about environmental requirements also. So we've talked about project, we've talked about science, but functional and environmental are the 2 that are left of the 4 types of requirements. If you don't have this and this yet, please go back in the book and review those, because you'll need those. What's coming up next, just to give you a heads up also, the functional environmental requirements, they start in your book on about page 51 is where week 5 starts, and that's where the functional environmental requirements are. They start on page 53 is the getting to school example for the functional requirements. Page 54 goes into more detail about your functional requirements for your payload. And page 55 in the book is a table that is set up to help you list alternatives for your functions for your payload. And the video will discuss those things as well. Page 56 in the book is a table that is meant to help you with environmental requirements. So please use that. Basically, it has your possible environments off to the right, and then your conditions off to the left. So basically, know where you're going to go. Now remember, your environment is very, very localized, very specific to what you're doing for your science objective. If you're going to go to Saturn, you're in the wrong project. If you're going to go to Jupiter, you're going to have a different environment than someone that goes to Europa. Even at Europa, if you're just flying through a plume, that's different than if you're on the surface, okay? So your environments are going to differ depending on where you're going to be. And remember, you only have to survive your environment for as long as you need to accomplish your payload, to accomplish your science objective with your payload. The example that PJ and I went over in class, PJ talked about most of it, was the LRO L-Cross mission. Remember that one with the launch vehicle? We had the little model. The L-Cross was the kamikaze part of the mission. You remember the upper stage hit the moon, creates this big dust cloud, and then this spacecraft just kamikaze flies through it, taking samples along the way. That's a pretty harsh environment, flying very, very fast through a cloud of dust and dirt and debris. You're like pummel. It's like sandblasting, right? It's a very harsh environment, but they weren't worried. They weren't too concerned about it because they only had to survive for 5 minutes. And so they designed it to survive just long enough to accomplish their science objective, and then it pancakes on the surface and they're done, okay? So it was a harsh environment, but they only had to survive for a few minutes, so they were good. So your environment, you need to list what your environment is like on page 56, but bear in mind that you might have a harsh environment, but if you only have to survive it for a few minutes, you can be okay. So all this, there's also an environments worksheet or environments checklist. It's on the downloads page on the Inspires website. Go to inspires.org, click on downloads, and about halfway down, there's a box that says, excuse me, that says checklists. The requirements checklist basically just asks you a bunch of questions. It's just a tool. It's not something you'll turn in, but it's just something to help you think about your requirements. That's what these exercises are, and that's what the environment checklist is about. Just to get you guys thinking. Oh, we didn't think about that. We didn't think about that. That's what we want to accomplish with these checklists, to get you guys thinking about certain things that your payload might experience, might have to do, or certain parts of the science objective or certain project requirements that you may have forgotten. That's what these videos and these checklists are about. That's about it for now. You're going to continue watching, and you'll see some functional. We'll have an example that explains functional requirements. It's a great example with someone who explains it very well. And then environmental requirements, we have a little display, a little example of environments and how to not choose how to not plan for environments properly. Anyway, hope you guys enjoy this, and if you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, keep watching. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Hey gang, how you doing? Matt here. Just me in this video. We're lucky. PJ's in the back of the room, so if I look off in this direction and snarl, it's because he's making comments at me. Anyway, so this portion of the video is called functional requirements. We just talked to you about requirements in general, the 4 types of requirements: project, functions, functional requirements, environmental requirements, and science requirements. Well, this is the functional requirements part, functional requirements. And functional requirements are usually, it's a bit weird. It's just the name, I think, that throws off a lot of people because it's a strange name. But basically, you guys have a science objective now. Your objective somewhere, doing something at Europa or Jupiter, something like that. You have a science objective. Well, there's certain things that your payload must do in order to accomplish that objective. Those are your those are your functional requirements. Things that your payload must do in order to accomplish your science objective. So, the best way that we know of to explain functional requirements better is through an example. Functional requirements is in week 5 in the book. Week 5 starts on page 51, beautiful page 51. The example called Getting to School, called Functional Requirements, semicolon, Getting to School, that's on page 53 if you want to follow along and write some stuff down. But, so let's just hit the ground running. So, PJ's laughing, I'm sorry. So I'm assuming that all of you guys that are watching this video have gotten to school at some point in your life, right? I mean, you might be at school right now, or you went to school yesterday, or maybe last week or something you went to school, but you've all gotten to school, right? So that's why this is called Getting to School. We hope that you can relate to this example. So our science objective, where's my marker? Our science objective, quote, science objective for this example is to get to school, okay? So our objective overall is get to school, right? That's our objective, our overarching objective, getting to school, right? Okay, there are 3 basic functions that you have to do in order to get to school. Do you know what they are? No, that's not right. Correct, yeah, the first one is get up, okay? Whoops. Get up. You have to get up, you know? You can't just like get to school and like float on a bed to school. Does not work, okay? Getting up, get up. Okay, what's the second thing you need to do? Yeah, very good. Get ready. You like how I'm kind of faking like I'm talking to somebody? Is that working for you guys? Okay. So, get ready. That's the second function. All the functions have the word get in them. I don't know if you noticed this yet, but they do. Okay, so that's a hint. This third function, the third function that we have is called get going, okay? We're getting going. Get going, okay? So, in order to get to school, we have get up, get ready, get going, okay? So, those are, our overarching science objective, our objective for this example is to get to school. We have 3 basic functions that we have to do in order to accomplish this objective, right? Okay, so our overall objective, our science objective, if you will, is to get to school. Our 3 functions that we use to accomplish that objective, our 3 functional requirements: get up, get ready, and get going. Now, underneath each of these functions, we can list alternatives that we can, things we can do to accomplish this function. You know, what are things that we can do or use to accomplish this function? So let's go ahead and get started with that. So get up. How do you get up how do you normally get up in the morning? What's the basic way to get up? Right, an alarm. Alarm. Use an alarm. Get on this side. What else do you use? Aha, parents. Your parents wake you up. Parents. What else wakes you up in the morning? Chicken? Yeah, some sort of pet, an animal. Technically, parents are animals, but they're a special type of animal. So we'll say pet under that. Your pet, PJ's pet chicken is going to wake him up in the morning. But what else do you use to get up? How else do you get up? Huh? Sun, naturally, yes. Like Lunesta. And naturally wake up. Naturally. And then what else? Rooster? Want to go with the rooster this time? Okay, let's go rooster. Rooster.
Chicken and a rooster.
I don't know what the difference of chicken and rooster is. I have no idea. So what else? And then of course that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you can just not get up, right? The null solution, not. And that doesn't really accomplish anything, but it's an option to not get up. So you can get up with an alarm. You can get up with your parents waking you up. Your pets can wake you up. You can just get up naturally, or some rooster nearby might wake you up. I don't know, something like that. So those are different ways you could get up in the morning, right? You could wake up, get up. So how do you get ready in the mornings? What's the first thing you do when you get ready? You get up and you get out of bed and you shower. Because you got the nappy hair, you know, your hair's like all, you know, when you wake up it's like, doo-doo-doo, you know, smell bad too, whatever. So, shower in the mornings, right? You shower, you brush your teeth. Hey, as a side note, dental hygiene is extremely important. And I want you guys to realize this, that, you know, the teeth that you have, you need your whole life, okay? So, this is just one of my little personal things, is that take good care of your teeth. Lots of brushing, lots of flossing, all that kind of jazz, you know? Because you know, dental hygiene is extremely important. You know, you got to have clean, nice teeth. I've had a problem with one of my teeth. That's why I say this. So what else do we do? Because our hair is still a mess after we got out of the shower, we brush our hair. Brush the hair because, you know, this is not an accident. You know, this whole ensemble here. Not an accident. I know. Don't hate me because I'm beautiful, all right? I know. I'm sorry. It's just, I was blessed, okay? So, likewise, you know, I got to put on my face in the morning, makeup, because again, not an accident. Ooh, hours and hours doing this right here. We got to put on some clothing, right? We got to get dressed. That might help. Get dressed. What else? You want to eat something? You want to eat some breakfast? Breakfast. Be fast. Okay. Now breakfast is one of those. Let's take an aside for a second. Let's break breakfast down. Let's break it down. I don't know what that means really. But so there's underneath breakfast. What could you have for breakfast? Right? You could have. Let's say you could have some OJ. Not the guy, but the orange juice. What else? Eggs. Eggs will work. Bagel. That's good. For me, I'm going to put Dr. Pepper because you know it's you got to start the day right? Dr. Pepper. What else? Cereal. Whatever, etc. Okay, so you can break down. So you can do this with your alternatives. You can break them down even further. You can decompose them. Is the $6 term we could use. You can decompose your alternatives into more detail basically. And then what else? After this, you're going to get your stuff.
What do you do with them?
Decompose them. Yeah, so it's not like something rotting in the backyard decomposing, but you can decompose, put them in further detail. So you get your stuff, you gather your book bags and whatnot, then you say bye. Say bye to whomever is at home, your rooster, your chicken, whatever. So say bye. Okay, so that's how you get ready. Get ready in the morning, right? You don't have to do all these things, but you can do some of these things at least. And now, how do you get going? How do you get to school? How do you physically get from where you got up in the morning and you took a shower and made your face up? How do you get from there to the school? Most people take a car, right? Car, bus, what else? Motorcycle. If I could spell motorcycle, it might help. What else? You could have an airplane. That's good. Helicopter. That's a good one. What else? A boat. That's not bad. Boat. An elephant. I like it for Hannibal. I don't know how to spell elephant. PH. There's a PH in there. I don't know. Elephant. A transporter for my geeks in the room. Yes, I like this. If I could spell transporter, it might help too. Transporter, and then your portal for the ultimate geeks in the room. So these are different ways of getting to school. Of actually get going. Alternatives you could use. Some of these are mutually exclusive. Let's just say walk. We don't even have walk up there, do we? Walk or bike. Sorry, some of the basic ones we forgot. I'm sorry, my bad. So these are different ways to get to school. Some of them might be used in combination. Some of them are mutually exclusive, like you can't use some of them in combination, but you get the drift. Okay, so we got all these listed now. So we got all this junk listed. We've got get up, get ready, get going. Underneath get up, we have our ways to get up in the morning. Underneath get ready, we have our different alternatives to get ready, some of which could be used in combination, some of which are mutually exclusive. And then we have our get going, our alternatives to get going. How do we actually physically get from point A to point B? All right, so this is how this works. You got your alternatives, Underneath your functional requirements, your 3 functional requirements, you have alternatives to accomplish these requirements. And let's just say we start putting these things together. Okay, this is how this works. So we wake up with an alarm in the morning. We take our shower. We brush our teeth. We brush our hair because it's not an accident. Make our face. We put some clothes on. That would be nice. We have some breakfast. Some OJ, eggs, and a bagel, and some Dr. Pepper. Skip the cereal. We grab our stuff. And then we say bye. We did all those just because we're very thorough. Got up really early because the alarm went off and we got up on time. So we jump in our car. We don't jump in, literally. We get in our car and then we drive to school and we're there. So we did it. Yay! We accomplished our science objective, our overall objective of getting to school, right? So are there other ways to accomplish this objective? Very good question. Thank you for asking. Yes, there are, in fact. So we can say, let's have some fun with this, because we're not having fun yet, are we? So I can't erase very quickly. I'm just stalling right now while I'm erasing. Okay, so let's say your pet wakes you up. Okay, your pet wakes you up. I don't know about you guys. I have 2 dogs. We've had issues with them. They can't tell time very well. I don't know. The watches fall off their arms because they just have paws. They don't really have a hand there. It doesn't really get larger, so the watches fall off of them. So my pets cannot tell time. It's unfortunate. Even though we have clocks all over the house. You got the cable box has the time flashing on it, or the time on it. The dogs never look at the cable box. I don't understand it. So anyway, pets, you get up, but you're late. You're like, I got 5 minutes to get to school. I don't want to be late again. So you get out of bed. You're like, I don't have time. You get your stuff. You grab your book bag. You say bye because that takes like half a second. And then you jump in the car. and you jump on your motorcycle. Let's say you jump on your motorcycle and you are at school. You made it on time. Woo! However, you're wearing your pajamas. I don't know if you noticed this. We did not. You're wearing your pajamas and you smell terrible, and your hair is a mess. It's a wreck. It's just unfortunate. It's unacceptable. You're also wearing your pajamas, which is probably against your school policy to wear pajamas to school. I don't know. Most schools had to frown upon that, at least. So, did we accomplish our objective of getting to school? Yes, we did. We got to school. However, did we do it correctly? No, probably not. Because, like I said, most schools have a requirement. They place a constraint on you that you have to wear proper clothing to school, right? So you got to get dressed. So this is let's put an asterisk by this, get dressed, because we have to do it, right? It's not something that we can skip. And there's also constraints on what you can wear. So just like you guys are going to have some constraints, some like 5 kilograms, stuff like that. You've got some requirements on you on what you can and cannot do, some constraints on what you can and cannot do, no bangs, no booms, stuff like that. So just keep that in mind as you're going through your functions, and that yes, you could accomplish your science objective in one way. However, you must abide by all your requirements and constraints. Okay? So you'll also notice that some of these just don't go well together. Some of these are they just don't fit, right? Because if you could take those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So there's 5, 8, 11 options. Multiply those out. That's that's 11 billion. That's a lot of options. If you just take all those out and you did all those, that is 11 billion different options that you have to get to school. 11 billion. To accomplish your objective, your overall science objective, you've got a lot of different options just from listing these things on the board here, right? So, but if you look at this, some of these things don't go well together, right? Because if you wake up with an alarm and you spend time, you take a shower, you brush your teeth, you brush your hair because, must look pretty. You get dressed. It's picture day, okay? So you're wearing like really nice clothes. And you have a great breakfast. Let's just do all those. You have a great breakfast. You get all your stuff. You say bye-bye. At that point, would you jump on a motorcycle to get to school? Probably not, because it would mess up your hair. You get like helmet head, and that's just, no one wants helmet head on picture day, right? So you're going to jump in a car. You might get in a bus. You might walk ever so slowly if it's not raining. Wouldn't get in a helicopter because it'll mess up your hair too, right? So might do a transporter because I don't think it'd mess up your hair necessarily. So elephants would just make you smell bad. They poop a lot. So elephants just not a very great way. If you're looking nice and you want to stay looking nice, I wouldn't take an elephant. So you probably take a car or a bus, something like that. So some of these combinations don't go well together. They're mutually exclusive, and you guys can see that. This is kind of a ridiculous example, but you can see how this works, right? So, and hopefully you can see how this will be applied to your payload. So on page 53 is this getting to school example. If you turn the page, you've got page 54. That's what happens after page 53, actually. I don't know if y'all knew that. So on page 54, we have the key things your payload must do. Functional requirements. Hey, how about that? So, by the way, when you're working on your ICD, and it asks for functional requirements, what are the key things your payload must do? You might want to check this page out. Little hint. So there are 6 things. 6 key things that your payload must do. Your payload has to deploy from the space. You have to deploy. Something has to deploy, right? We've talked about this in a previous video. Some part of your spacecraft, some part of your payload has to deploy from the spacecraft and then take a measurement. Not the entire thing, but at least some part of it. So there's deployment. You have to take measurements, right? That's a function that you must do. In order to accomplish a science objective, you have to take measurements, scientific measurements to accomplish it. You have to collect this data. The data has to be stored somewhere, at least for, even if it's for a brief moment in time, a half second. You have to store this data. You have to provide power to take measurements and to send the data, right? And also to collect data, you have to provide power. So like, so how do you collect data? That's a good question, Matt. Thank you for asking. I just answered myself. I think I did that wrong. I think I did that backwards. Collecting data, something as simple as a thumb drive, a USB drive, right? But this requires power to work, right? It requires power. It also requires a brain, a computer. We'll talk about that in a second. So you've got take measurements. Those are your scientific measurements, your scientific instruments you're going to take measurements with. Collect the data on like a USB drive, something like that. Provide power. You can provide power with batteries, or solar panels might be an option, but it's tough out there, really far away. We're at Jupiter and we're at Europa, very, very far away from the sun. Solar panels are difficult, but most teams end up with batteries. And then sending the data, you're going to, to send the data, you need a transmitter and an antenna. And a transmitter is just basically a specialized processor. So you'll notice on the next sheet on page 55, it's got a table, okay? And it's got your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 functions. I skipped one of them, sorry. One of the most important functions on the previous page. It's this word at the bottom. It doesn't say house payload, it says house your payload. It's a verb, house, because housing is more than just structure. To house something means to provide structure, to provide support for it, physical support, but also to provide for it thermally. It means it keeps it in a nice environment. When you're housed, there's not just a roof over your head, but you're also kept warm and cozy, and they give you power if you need power. So that's housing. So you have to house your payload as well. So on this next page, on page 55, you see that your 6 functions are listed across the top, and their alternatives on the right. So underneath each, you can list alternatives. Just like this example, you will list alternatives for deployment. How could you deploy? You might use a spring. We haven't talked about this before, but on both the orbiter and the lander of the UAH elements, on both the orbiter and the lander, there's high pressure helium that you can have access to. So basically, you can become a t-shirt cannon, or basically it's or a potato cannon, something like that. You guys can be shot off of the spacecraft or the lander with high pressure helium. That's an option for deployment as well. Most teams end up choosing this. Measurement. Those are going to be the instruments that you chose way back when you filled out your science instrument list, your science instrument table. That's the instruments that you chose, like thermocouple, pressure transducer, mass spectrometer. Those are the instruments here. Those are how you're going to measure. Those are the measurements you take. Collecting the data, like I said before, you need a thumb drive. But can this thumb drive work by itself? Can I just start writing? Can I just put data on it? Can I just start writing on it? Take my pen out and write on it? Well, I could write on it, but it doesn't collect much data that way. It requires a brain. It requires a computer, a processor, a CPU basically, is required for storage to work. So something that actually physically takes the data from the instrument and puts it on the storage. There's something that has to be smart right there, okay? And there's so you need a CPU for that. To send the data, like I said just a second ago, you need an antenna to actually transmit it, and then you need a transmitter, which is the process. A transmitter is a specialized processor that does the thinking. It actually sends the data through the antenna to where it's going to go, to this UH spacecraft. You got to provide power. Most teams use power. Most teams use batteries for power. There's other alternatives as well. There's kinetic power, there's thermal power, there's solar power, there's hydroelectric power. Might not work on Jupiter or Europa. And then there's housing. Housing is where you're going to have a lot of options as well. You can look at housings. You can look at materials like aluminum, tungsten. Tungsten's a weird one. I don't know why I said tungsten. Titanium. Those are metals. You can look at metals and non-metals, essentially. Non-metals would include carbon fiber, plastics, hard plastics, other insulators. You might use some insulators as well. The thing you want to be careful with your housing, you want to pay attention to that, because the housing, the material that you use for housing could be affected by the outside environment, and this is where you're going to have to look at some of your environmental requirements. So I'm sure you guys know this, but metals conduct. They conduct electricity and they conduct heat. So if you have a metal housing, then if it's touching a very cold surface like ice or something, then it's going to draw heat away from your payload. Do you want this to happen, or do you want your payload to be insulated? So those are things to think about when you're thinking about your housing material. There's also the shape of the housing. Is it a sphere? Is it a rectangle? Or are you using a CubeSat? You know, so there's those things to consider for housing as well. So those are just that's page 55 again. You can use page 55, fill it out, and then we'll talk about it at your one of your TPRs or your PSR. Let's see what else. That's about it for functional requirements. Next up, we will talk more about requirements, and we hope that you guys understand this. If you have any questions, please let us know. Please email us or ask your teacher to email us, and we will talk to you later. Thanks. Bye. Hey gang, it is 10 degrees in Huntsville this morning, and I am not dressed for this weather. What I'm wearing might be fine for indoors, or might be okay for a nice summer afternoon, or if I lived in, you know, like Hawaii or for the southern hemisphere, but it is not what you want to wear this morning. So why am I wearing shorts and a t-shirt when it's 10 degrees outside? Fahrenheit, by the way. I don't know, I didn't think this through very well, to be honest with you, but hopefully this will remind you that you need to design your payload in order to survive and function in its environment. Okay? So, I forgot what I'm going to say, it's so cold. So in order for you to design for your environment, you need to know your environment. You need to do a little research, okay? So you don't want your payload to end up like me, you know, either hot or cold or whatever. You want to make sure your payload is just right and can survive its own environment. Okay, so pay attention to your environmental requirements. They're very important. Okay, that's it. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Hey guys, unlike what you just saw Matt being very stupid with, here it's nice and warm, and Matt's enjoying his tea, as you can tell. I don't know why, because it's fake, but he seems to think it's really great. But remember, payloads need to be in a nice, warm, comfortable environment. So we do that for you while you stay with us on the UH spacecraft. But once you leave, you've got to make sure you can handle that environment that you're in. Like Matt was just a few minutes ago, being very stupid outside in 10-degree weather with shorts and a t-shirt on, and he's now numb, and he's now warming up with this fake tea. You don't want that for your payload. You want to make sure you can function properly, which means you need to be in a very comfortable environment. You need to create that environment, because the outside could be awful. Right now here, it's still 10 degrees. We've not really changed much outside, but we're inside being protected. And so that's what you've got to remember when you do your environment requirements, and design from that you make sure you can still function in the very harsh or very cold or whatever environment you are in on Venus. So remember that when you're doing these environmental requirements. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Jolly good old chap. Hey gang, okay, so we've just talked to you about functional requirements and environmental requirements. The other requirements, project and scientific requirements, we've talked about in previous videos. But so we're done talking about requirements now. So what does this mean for you? How do you guys deal with this? In your book, like we said in previous parts of the video, in your book, the requirements start basically on page 51 is the week 5. The functional requirements are on page 54, and also on page 55. Environmental requirements are on page 56. So list your environments. What environments do you expect your payload to see? And it's going to be different depending on the different places that you choose to go. If you, excuse me, If you go to Europa, it's going to be really cold. If you go to Jupiter, it's also going to be cold, but as you plummet through the atmosphere, you might warm up from the heat, right? You also have a lot of pressure on Jupiter. So different environments because of different places. And even on Europa, if you land on the surface of Europa, if you contact the surface of Europa, it's going to be much colder than just flying through the open space. It'll also probably last longer on the surface. So remember, your environment depends on where you choose to go, and you only have to survive your environment as long as you need to accomplish your science objective. Remember when we talked about the LRO L-Cross missions? The L-Cross was the kamikaze, that hit the moon, and after there was a big upper stage, hits the moon, makes a big dust cloud, and the kamikaze mission comes in and samples water through the dust. That mission lasted for 5 minutes. It had a very harsh environment because it was flying through clouds of debris and dust and dirt and stuff. But it only needed to live for 5 minutes, so they didn't care about that, right? Harsh environment, but it only had to live for 5 minutes, so they weren't too worried about it because they were confident it could survive for 5 minutes. So that's what you guys need to consider. What's your environment? How long do you have to survive that environment? Page 56 will help you with the environments. Page 57 is where we kind of bring all the requirements together. It's called the interface control document. That's not page 56. And page 56 helps you get ready for the ICD. There's also a separate video about the ICD. But I'm going to touch on it right here. Basically, you put all your requirements into one document and then you submit it to UAH. That's the ICD, Interface Control Document. We want to make sure that you understand your requirements, essentially. So that's where this is headed, and the ICD is going to be due on September 26th. We'll go over it. We're going to see you guys between when you're watching this video and September 26th. So we'll have a team progress report between now and then, and we'll talk about requirements just to make sure we understand, everybody understands everything. But that's where this is headed. This is how the requirements tie together. Is that you need these requirements. You need to know what your payload must do and what your payload's going to experience, and in order to accomplish your mission. And that's what the requirements are all about. So in order for you to design, start designing something, you need to know all this information. Anyway, so that's about wraps it up. Again, if you have any questions or issues, email us or call us, or have your teachers email us or call us, whatever. That's about it. We'll see you guys in a week. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.